force field. Here they come. Speed up. Speed up. Missile. Double. Double level 2. Missile level 2. Destroy the core. Guard. Force field. Double level 2. Destroy all of them.
sir.
Crush its head. Force field. Force field. Force field. Force field. huge life force on the radar. Shoot the center. Be on your guard.
That doesn't hurt.
Force field. Double level 2. Force field. Force field. Force field. Lasers level 2. Watch your back. Destroy the core. Black hole vanished. Drive system switched to normal mode. Destroy the core. Destroy the core. Crush all of them. Here they come. Crush all of them. Destroy the core. Destroy the core. Destroy the core. Destroy the core.
I hope you can entertain me.
Destroy the core. Speed up.
Here they come.
Speed up. Missile. Double. Double level 2. Missile level 2. Watch your back. Force. Level 2. Destroy the core. Be on your guard. Force speed.
think you can beat me with that, loser?
Crush its head! objects on the radar. Shoot the center. Be on your guard.
That doesn't hurt.
Force field. Double level 2. Rapid bend. Force field. Force field. Force field. Force field. Laser level 2. Watch your back. Destroy the core. Black hole vanished. Drive system switched to normal mode. Destroy the core. Destroy the core. Here they come. Crush all of them. Destroy the core. 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 Missile level 2. Watch your back. Destroy the core. destroy the core. Speed up. Speed up. Missile. Double. Missile level 2. Speed up. Speed up. Missile. Double. Missile level 4. Confirm huge life force on the racer. Attack from behind. destroy the core. Force field. Force field. Force field. Force field. Laser level 2. Level 2. Force field. Confirmed huge life force on
Force
the radar. Shoot the center. Be on your guard.
That doesn't hurt.
bend behind. Speed up. Missile. Gravity bend behind. Speed up. Missile. Gravity bend behind. Speed up. Gravity bend behind. Speed up. Missile. Gravity bend behind. Speed up. Missile. Force field. Watch your back. Destroy the core. Black hole vanished. Drive system switched to normal mode. Laser level 2. Destroy the core. Destroy the core. Crush all of them. they come. Crush all of them. Destroy the core. Destroy the core. Destroy the core. Destroy the core.
I hope you can entertain me.
Destroy the core. up. Here they come. Speed up. Missile. Double. Missile level 2. Force confirmed. Huge life force on the radar. Attack from behind. the core. UFO coming. Be on your guard. Force. Force. Shoot the center. Speed up. Speed up. center. Destroy all of them. Speed up. Missile. Speed up. Missile. Speed up. Speed up. Speed up. Speed up. Speed up. Speed up. Missile. Double. Poor boy. 10, 9, 8, 6, 3, 1. Game over.